It's a newsreader's audition from John Worthy. I apologise that I can't use an auto cue with the facilities available to me, so I'll read from sight from the desk. So in the latest news, the federal opposition has new ammunition against the government when Parliament resumes tomorrow, with a report showing Australia's jobless figures actually top 1 million. That's much higher than the official figures show, and means the unemployment rate is 12.5%, compared with the official Bureau of Statistics figure of 9.2%. The figures are contained in a CES report obtained by Melbourne's Sunday Age newspaper. The paper says the CES figures show that the real jobless numbers are actually counted. They're registered as the unemployed people of the country, whereas the Statistics Bureau figures are calculated from a random sample of households. The fate of the government's waterfront reform strategy now rests with the Industrial Relations Commission in Melbourne, which today is being asked to support the wage deal worked out last week. Unions, employers and the federal government will ask the Commission to endorse the deal, effectively ignoring all its wage decisions which rejected enterprise bargaining. The wages plan was hammered out last week in a campaign involving the Prime Minister Bob Hawke, the unions and the employer groups. The deal provides for an immediate $12 rise and a further 6% rise conditional on enterprise agreements and new worker classification. Yugoslavia's leadership says the country is now on the brink of civil war after ethnic gun battles that have killed at least 17 people. The state presidency has authorized the army to intervene to prevent more violence. The presidency said the political and security situation is threatening to escalate, and the conflict has brought the country to the brink of civil war. 13 Croatian police and 3 Serbs were killed last Thursday in the bloodiest clashes between Yugoslavia's 2 biggest nationalities since the Second World War. Foreign Affairs Minister Senator Gareth Evans will ask the Cabinet to give more aid to victims of the Bangladesh cyclone, which has left 125,000 people dead and 10 million homeless. However, Senator Evans says the move is not in response to criticism by aid agencies who have slammed Australia's $250,000 donation as pathetic and miserly. In Melbourne, police say a 7th fire in 10 months at a school in the southern beach suburb of Frankston was started deliberately and now brings the total damages bill to almost $2 million. Police say an inflammable liquid was used in 2 places to start the fire in the senior building at Frankston shortly before 10 o'clock last night. Arson squad detectives are again being called in to investigate. It was the 3rd arson attack on the senior section of the school since January, and there have also been 4 fires in the junior section of the secondary college. Now to sport, and little-known newcomer Fabrice Santoro has ended Australia's brave bid for victory with a dramatic win over Wally Masur in the last match of the Davis Cup quarter-final against France. Santoro, playing only his 2nd Davis Cup singles match, lifted France into the semi-finals by beating Masur 6-3, 6-4, 4-6, 6-1 in 2 hours 49 minutes in front of quite a delirious home crowd. In football, Sydney Swans coach Cole Kinnear believes his team is ready to climb up the Australian Football League ladder following its impressive 47-point win over Geelong at the Sydney Cricket Ground. Sydney went into the match holding the lowly 12th place on the ladder, but belied that by defeating 3rd place Geelong by 20 goals 24 to 14 goals 13. And now to the weather around the nation. And for tomorrow, in Adelaide, some rain with a top temperature of 18 degrees, Brisbane fine and 25, Canberra fine 21, Melbourne mainly fine with a top temperature of 20, Perth fine and 20, Sydney fine and 22, and in Hobart cloudy but mainly fine and a top temperature of 16 degrees. Well, that's the latest news to this moment, and at this juncture of the audition I would like to include 2 or 3 on-the-road segments which I produced for SBS World News. Thank you. The Council agrees there is a need to revise the cost of justice, and this could happen with an agreement by federal and state courts to move quickly on disputes and make judges more readily available, but there can't be shortcuts to lowering costs.
I think it's a very worthwhile inquiry. I do think you can do a number of things to reduce costs and ensure that the man in the street continues to have proper access to the courts. It does happen at the moment, and the task is to ensure that the costs don't escalate to the point where people turn away from the courts.
The 8-member Senate committee says it's not on a witch hunt after lawyers and their costs, but wants to come up with positive recommendations on matters like legal aid, small claims, and the awarding of court costs.
It does seem that the big corporations can pay anything they like to get legal representation, have it done speedily and so on, whereas ordinary citizens have to wait a long time and can't afford what corporations can. And I think that is one of the major thrusts of why we've called it the cost of justice.
The Cost of Justice inquiry continues in Melbourne tomorrow, with submissions from the Law Institutes and the Business Council of Australia. John Worthy, SBS News. The discussion paper released today will be studied by the Cairn government and representatives of Victoria's ethnic communities. Although the paper gives no precise definition of racial vilification, it does cite acts of intolerance, graffiti insults, and jokes aimed at inciting racial hatred.
What we are doing is to examine ways and means by which the future generations in this state, and in particular in this country, will be able to grow together, develop a cohesive society, and take away unnecessary antagonism that may exist between various people.
While the Victorian Council for Civil Liberties agrees with steps being taken to help end racial hatred, it is concerned that any legislation introduced could be abused by dominant ethnic groups to stifle comment and silence minorities.
We just have concerns that the legislation may, first of all, inhibit minority groups expressing strong points of view, allowing the dominant group to sue someone like a Michael Mansell for making a provocative remark. But we are interested in what the discussion paper has to say about alternate methods of preventing racist remarks being promoted in this country.
Victoria's racial vilification discussion paper will be circulated widely through the community, and written submissions will be accepted by the Government Committee until the end of August. John Worthy, SBS News. Already, a Melbourne-based Italian group is well advanced in its plans for the possible introduction of pay television. Programming will highlight cultural activities, the arts, sports, entertainment.
The Italian are so, entertainment people. They're very happy people. They want to see more. They want to see films about their country. The equipment doesn't have to be like SBS. Doesn't have to be like Channel 9 or 7 or 10 or Channel 2. It can be done very simple and be on the air.
The federal government is expected to make a decision on subscription television in the next few months, and the Pay TV Action Group says it fully supports the implementation of a service specialising in ethnic programming.
Pay TV will, of course, serve the community in toto. I suppose the general movie channel will also be received by the Italian and other ethnic communities. But Tele Italia is honing in specifically on the Italian community so that it may serve them with entertainment in the Italian language. The same will probably occur with the Greek communities, perhaps the Vietnamese and so on.
The Italian community has already lobbied Communications Minister Kim Beazley to secure non-English speaking pay television if the government overrides opposition by Australia's commercial networks. John Worthy, SBS News.